Hey there. Hello, hello. Welcome back, friends. It is February 13th, 2019, and you know what this is. This is the A-Side Live Chat Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us, guys. Hope all you guys out there having a wonderful Wednesday morning. As always, we very much appreciate you spending some of that with us. And as always, I am joined today by my good friend, the hardest working man in the business, the California King himself, Marc Raimondi. How are things, Marc? What's going on over there?
Don Al-Shatti. What a sight for sore eyes you are, sir. How's your day going?
Oh, it's going. I'm getting ramped up for UFC Phoenix over here in the desert. How you doing?
I'm also getting ramped up for UFC Phoenix, but first, Bellator 215, Bellator 216, Invicta, whatever else is going on. It's going to be a very long, fun week of fights. One of the biggest weeks of fights I can remember in quite some time, with two Bellators, UFC on big ESPN. Invicta's got a pretty good card on Friday night. I'm sure I'm missing some other stuff. I'm probably forgetting some other stuff. I think doesn't one have a card as well this week? It's pretty loaded. It's pretty loaded.
Really quickly, I hate to start the show off this way, but I don't know if we're live. It seems like we are live, but it's giving me weird feedback. If y'all out there are able to see us on Twitter, let us know, I guess. Because right now it's not showing what it normally shows when we're live. So that's fun. That's the joys of
live on my screen.
Yeah, that's the joys of live programming. Seems like we're live, so let's just roll with it. Well, hey man, we have another loaded show for you guys this week. I mean, we had UFC 234 last weekend. Now UFC Phoenix this weekend. The train keeps rolling, Marc. We'll get to all of that today. Plus, like you said, MVP Daly and more. But as we always say, this is your guys' show, so we'll talk about whatever you want us to talk about. You can ask us a question on the MMA Fighting page below. Any question that gets 3 recommendations, those will turn green, get priority, or you can ask a question on Twitter using the hashtags the A-Side or Chat Rappers. Replay of this show comes up immediately following on YouTube. Also, you know the drill by now. iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, SoundCloud, Stitcher, wherever else you get your pods. And with that, let's go ahead and do this, Marc.
Shaun, just 1 second. Alexander K. Lee, the incomparable, is saying that the show is coming in clear and nice, but it didn't start up right away like it normally does. So I guess please refresh the screen if you guys are not. Well, then again, me saying that doesn't really mean a damn thing if you can't see me or hear me. So that doesn't help. But hopefully everyone refreshes and people get back to the regularly scheduled programming here.
Yes, I'm getting feedback from a trio of loyal listeners on Twitter. Our friend John Baltz, also Dustin Love, and The Sound of Violence, all saying that we're live. So let's just roll with it. If issues come up, let us know, and we'll try to address those in real time. You gotta love live programming. But hey, Marc, let's do this. And the first question coming today is from the MMA Fighting page from M Haydock 06. And this is, I guess, a strange way to start this off, but we'll start this off this way because this is the people's show and we do what they want. Training backgrounds. Shaun and Marc, what are your respective training backgrounds? Do you have any experience in any martial arts? If so, and for how long? And do you currently train? Thank you, guys. So, Marc, let's start with you.
Oh, man. I trained in Muay Thai and boxing for about 4 years when I lived in New York. And when I moved to LA about 4 years ago, I mostly stopped training. And that's my story. Yeah. Haven't really found a gym here that I like, and my work schedule is, as you know, Shaun, kind of strange. I mean, there's no excuses. I should be doing it. And King's MMA opened up like a few blocks away from me on Santa Monica Boulevard in West Hollywood, and I should be at that gym probably right now training, but I'm not because I'm a lazy ass. But yeah, I trained for about 4 years in Muay Thai and boxing.
Don't be too hard on yourself. You're my lazy ass.
I appreciate that. I'm not really sure what that means, but
yes. So I echo that. I mean, when I did a lot of boxing when I was in high school, and then immediately following high school, and then I had a couple bad injuries. I had actually really bad brain injury that kind of took me out of that. So I was not able to do that anymore for a while. So I transitioned to jiu-jitsu. I did a little bit of jiu-jitsu and then tore my knee 2 different times. I have a lot of injuries. I'm Cain Velasquez over here with my injury history. I tore my knee 2 different times. And then so last year I finally came back to jiu-jitsu. I trained some at the MMA lab. and then I hurt my back, and then I hurt my shoulder. And so just now, this past basically 2 months, I've been more or less getting back to full strength. I've been back in just the regular gym, working out, trying to build that strength back up. I keep telling myself, and every time I see John Crouch, I'm telling him I'm coming back. And at this point, I just got to, because I don't want to be a flake, and I really enjoy it. I just can't stay healthy, damn it. I just cannot stay healthy. Cain Velasquez needs to give me some tips, because it seems like he has it figured out now. But yes, 2019, the plan is to get back in the MMA lab. And if any of you train at the MMA lab, shout me out, and I will see you there, hopefully. But let's keep it moving.
That's totally not my problem. My problem is not injuries. It's just a lack of freaking discipline. But I am back in the gym training with a personal trainer, trying to get big, son. Trying to get on that Luke Thomas flow.
Oh yeah, you trying to get swole?
Trying.
What's your weight right now?
How much do I weigh?
Yeah,
probably about 160.
Oh man, you ain't cutting to flyweight anytime soon. What's going on?
There was a time that I was actually right after I had gallbladder surgery. I don't think anyone really gives a shit about any of this, but I'm gonna talk about it anyway. I was really thin, and I was probably about 125, after gallbladder surgery, because I couldn't really eat anything. And then I've progressively gotten bigger since the surgery. I haven't figured out a way to get it off again. Maybe I can take out another organ or so. Is there another organ I can take out and still be fairly healthy?
I'm not a doctor, so
but now I'm trying to repurpose all of this excess weight into something a little bit more aesthetically pleasing. So and functional.
Really, you're cultivating mass. That's what you're doing.
It is bulking season, Shaun Al-Shatti. It is bulking season.
Well, man, you're always talking about Conor McGregor versus Anderson Silva, the little guy versus the big guy.
Yeah.
If you're at 160, you are approaching my weight class, son.
What is your weight class?
I'm like 198. So I can cut down to 185. I can cut down to 185, boy. We can do this.
Look, I'm still probably a 45 or even at this weight.
Well, let's keep it moving, because nobody cares about any of this. And let's talk about this weekend, man, because it's going to be a big one here in the desert. This next question is coming from the X Factor V2, who wants to know, can Cain be trusted to be champion again? And I don't like how he started this off. I'm going to go ahead and say, first off, congratulations to Marc Raimondi for proving me wrong about Anderson Silva on Saturday night. I don't like that you made me say that. X Factor. I thought it was going to be a whitewash, but you said don't count the spider out. And while he did lose, it was almost like the Anderson old was back, he writes. My question this week concerns Cain Velasquez. If Cain beats Ngannou, should he be brought back into title contention? He is without a doubt one of the best heavyweights in the world, and he just had 3 fights, but he just had 3 fights in 5.5 years. And during that period, when he was champ, he held up the division for 2 years due to injury. Should the UFC let him have another crack at the title, knowing his history with injuries? We have enough divisions held up as it is. True that. I know DC and Cain won't fight each other, but it's looking like DC will retire by the end of the year. So this is an interesting way, I guess, to start the conversation about UFC Phoenix. Because I know at this point, I spent some time with Francis Ngannou this week, and I spent some time earlier last month with Cain Velasquez in the lead up to this fight. And both of them expressed in no uncertain words that they are confident and sure and see it themselves as this is a surefire #1 contender fight. Both of them believe that a win on Sunday, like I keep used to saying Sunday because it's not Saturday this week, but a win on Sunday will give them the next title shot whenever the whole DC Lesnar Miocic situation gets figured out. But is that responsible? Then let's answer this question then, Marc. Do you feel like is Cain Velasquez, can he be trusted to be that champion?
I mean, I understand where this question is going, and I get it, because he has not been very dependable over the last few years, to say the least. I mean, it's hard getting the guy to fight, and through no fault of his own. Granted, it's injuries. He says he has it all figured out now, and he's back and he's healthy. I hope that's true, because I think the sport is better when Cain Velasquez is fighting and he's good to go. But if you're the UFC, I don't know if you can think about that, because if Cain Velasquez beats Francis Ngannou, what else do you do with him? I mean, do you just have him be a gatekeeper in the division? No, I think you have to push him toward the top of the division. Of course, that's all going to depend on Dan Cormier, because we know, Shaun, that those two guys are not going to fight each other. It's not negotiable. It's not going to happen. There will not be a Cain versus DC fight. So if DC is still the champion, this is not a number one contender fight for Cain Velasquez, at least at the moment. Dana White says he wants DC to fight 3 more times. So that would be fights against possibly a Miocic rematch, possibly a Brock Lesnar fight. And then there's always the possibility of Jon Jones moving to heavyweight.
Well, hold on. Let's add the caveat that Dana White says a lot of things.
Certainly. But also don't forget that DC is a company man, and he's done a lot of things that the UFC's asked him to do. I don't know if that'll happen this time, but these are all fights, again, that I don't think that DC is opposed to. Even though he's talking a lot of crap about Stipe Miocic, we know who DC is as a person. We know who he is as a competitor. And I would be shocked if he doesn't give Miocic the rematch. If he really does have a few fights left, I think one of those will be Miocic. And I think one of them still could be Jones. And DC wants Jones at heavyweight. It's a matter of Jon Jones making the move up. But anyway, that's kind of an aside. As far as Cain Velasquez goes,
Hold on. Would you say that was an aside on the A side?
On the A side? That's very cute. Will you leave the bad puns to me?
I was proud of that. I was pretty proud.
Will you leave them to me? Let me be the villain. You're the good guy. I'm the asshole on this show.
That's fair.
So it's not even a matter of the UFC trusting Cain. It's a matter of what happens with DC. And then there's just no choice. I mean, Cain Velasquez is one of the top heavyweights in the world. I think even now, if he gets by Ngannou, he has to fight a top 5, a top 2, a top 3 heavyweight next. I don't think there's any way around it.
I don't think there's any way around it that whoever wins this, maybe not Francis, but if Cain wins, there is no doubt in my mind that he is holding out for that title shot, because he has already shown that he doesn't care about waiting.
Even if DC's, Cain is 36 now, which by the way, is still pretty young for heavyweight. But
yeah, that's very true. Also, people talk about him with injuries, but he doesn't have a lot of mileage on him in terms of fight years. And also, he's been healthy for about a year at this point, year and a half. He's just been kind of chilling being a dad. Trying
to get that contract up.
And he got it. He got that contract. DC, I don't believe, has 3 fights left. I know that that's what the UFC wants. I think he has 1 or 2 max. 2 would surprise me. I think he has 1 or 2 left. Maybe he'll get that. I think he'll get that Brock Lesnar fight. And then maybe it'll be Stipe, or maybe it'll be Jon Jones. And then I think he's done. Ultimately, I think if Cain Velasquez wins this weekend, I could see him holding out until October or November or whenever it will take for DC to retire. And then they do that vacant title shot, obviously probably against Stipe or something like that. But just more broadly, this fight is fascinating to me, man, because just having talked to both of these men at this point, I was at lunch with Francis Ngannou earlier this week. And I think most people are under the assumption that, this is a terrible stylistic matchup for Francis. They're just an atrocious stylistic matchup. You have a guy who is good at everything that Francis is seemingly bad at in terms of cardio and wrestling and just all the ability to ground people into dust. It was interesting to me talking to his coach, Ferdinand Lopez. They kind of have that feeling that you get sometimes when you talk to guys before fights where they know something that you don't. They have been looking at Cain Velasquez from the very, very, very beginning. From the moment Francis Ngannou started MMA, Ferdinand Lopez and Francis talked and looked and studied Cain Velasquez and said, this is the one man that would be your absolute kryptonite. That would be the worst possible matchup for you. We need to build you to the point where you can beat this man. And over the past 6 or 8 months, Francis Ngannou has really sort of found himself, I would say. I'm going to have a feature about this probably coming out tomorrow. But he really has done a lot of soul searching. He's really rediscovered the joy that he lost. He admitted to me that the title shot and all of the fame and all of the money came too soon for him, and he wasn't ready for it. And that you kind of saw that play out in real time with the Derek Lewis fight. And since then, we saw him against Curtis Blades in China, 45 seconds. I am fascinated with the idea that they have been studying Cain Velasquez for years and years and years. And this is, in their minds, in both of their minds, this is the one guy that will show whether Francis is ready or not to be on this stage, to be in that championship conversation. It feels like they know something that we don't. And anytime that is the case, I'm in. I'm all in on just seeing how this plays out. It's going to be a fascinating week and a fascinating matchup.
Just real quick, I'm asking you for a prediction. Today in late February, what's today's date? February 13th. What would be your pick, your guess as to what the UFC will do for the big International Fight Week pay-per-view? What will be the headliner for that, do you think?
DC versus Lesnar.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, and that's kind of why I asked, because we're talking about DC and Cain and that whole situation. Does DC fight before then, or is that DC's next fight?
I think that's his next fight.
Wow. Okay. So DC is gonna be out for a bit. Basically, is what you're saying.
That's my guess, but that's just a guess. I mean, it's still pretty far way away at this point. What about you? What would you say?
I think that could very well be the case. I think probably a number of things are going on right now behind the scenes. I would imagine they're trying to figure out what's going on with Lesnar, and I don't know if they're going to be given any guarantees until after WrestleMania is over for Lesnar. I don't know if he's going to come back, and I think he's probably still playing both sides as he does so well between WWE and the UFC. I don't know if DC will want to wait. I don't know. I still think that Stipe fight is a possibility, and it also makes me wonder what are they going to do for the April pay-per-view? What are they going to do for UFC 236? They have that date on the calendar. There's no location for it because I think they're waiting to see what fight they get to determine where it's going to be. It could be DC. Who else? What other champion is available to fight in April? Right. I mean, everyone else is either booked or just fought.
Shevchenko.
Sure, but she's not gonna headline.
Yeah, not a headliner. That's a good question. I would have to think about it.
Against someone, but probably Shevchenko versus Jessica Eye is not a pay-per-view headliner.
Max Holloway.
Dillashaw,
Cejudo, that whole situation.
I don't know if Dillashaw will be ready.
I'm just saying there's options out there. Like if they wanted to do Cejudo Benavidez and just get a quick one in there, there's options to
you can definitely do that because Cejudo took no damage in that fight against Dillashaw. He's fresh.
Yeah.
But I mean the damage for him though is the weight cut. Even though he does it better now than he did, your body still needs to recover. So I'm not sure if he's back. Did you hear that?
Yes, that was you. So we're gonna move on.
I can't figure out.
No. Just change it. We're gonna move on. And I'll set up the question while you're fixing it.
This is my new laptop, and I can't figure out how to turn off like the iMessage. You know who this is? This man doesn't even realize the A side is going on. You know who this is? It's freaking Helwani. Helwani's hitting me up during the A side.
How dare he?
Come on, right. Ariel. Don't you know that I'm live? I wouldn't be hitting you up during Ariel Helwani's MMA show. Come on.
All right, let's keep it moving, man. Next question's coming from the MMA Fighting page is going to be from SJY, who wants to know about a title shot. Which of these streaking fighters gets a title shot first, he asks, and which one wins a title first? So this is a two-part question. So the three options are Israel Adesanya, Marlon Moraes, and Johnny Walker. That's an interesting question.
Yeah.
So who gets a title shot first? I think it's going to be Israel. But who wins a title shot first? I would say Marlon. What about you?
I would say Adesanya for both. I think that who gets a title shot first is somewhat easy. I think Adesanya's next fight is a title shot, whereas I think they're probably going to do Dillashaw versus Cejudo at 135. Just a gut feeling. I think Marlon is going to be left out again of that title conversation right now.
I agree with you.
Adesanya gets a title shot, and I think he wins. I think he becomes middleweight champion. If I had to guess, gun to my head right now. Now, is that against Kelvin Gastelum in an interim title shot? Maybe that could be the case. Could it be against Robert Whittaker? Maybe, but I think Whittaker is going to be out for a little bit. I don't think he's coming back anytime soon from that hernia surgery, because Matt Damon told me so.
Dr. Matt Damon, you never can doubt him. Let's keep it moving. Next question coming from the MMA Fighting page. Johnny Walker is amazing, and this is
damn right.
He's not wrong. And this is from Used to Be Good. Hello, guys. I hope that you're having a great day. I love the positivity today. I'm loving it. Just how good is that Jimmie Walker kid?
Come on, man. You can't say Johnny Walker is amazing and then spell the man's name wrong 2 sentences later. Come on, Used to Be Good.
We started out
good 2 sentences before, and now you're bad. Come on, Used to Be Good.
We started out so good there. How good is Jimmie Walker? After the 15-second KO over Justin Ledet, I think he deservingly got a shot at the number 13 ranked Misha Cirkunov. However, this means that Johnny Walker will have fought 3 times in a little over 3 months. How do you think, is this healthy considering weight cuts and other issues? Speaking of light heavyweight, I just cannot wait for Joan Smith. What is your prediction for the main event? And how many picograms this time? P.S. I really enjoy the show, despite the time difference and the good coverage and quality content on the website. Can somebody make a review or a short resume, a resume of Khabib's book? I've not yet bought it because I cannot find it in English. Best regards from Europe. Khabib time. Okay, so there's a lot there, but let's just tackle the Johnny Walker part of it first.
Yeah. On the Khabib book, I think I saw on social media that it is going to be reprinted in English, and if that is the case, I would love to read it. I'll get it as soon as I can, if that's possible.
So Johnny Walker, he now steps in to fight Misha Cirkunov on short notice, and this man is a very busy man. I mean, he wanted to fight as soon as possible, and he found a fight as soon as possible. My reservation with this is I hope that the UFC, I mean, we talked about this a couple weeks ago. I hope that the UFC does not go too deep into this man too quickly. I hope they do not throw him into the deep end too quickly. He is only 2 fights into his UFC career. The second one was a very short fight. I mean, both of them were more or less short fights. They were very impressive, but I don't want to see this guy fighting top 15 fighters yet. I want to see him be built. I want to see him get the chance to really acclimate himself and find himself in different situations in the octagon before you're throwing him in to this top 15, that light heavyweight class that is getting better and better, because we talked about it a couple weeks ago. The difference between the top 8 or the top 7 or even the top 5 at 205 is gigantic between, the 9 through 15 or 8 through 15, however you want to rate that. The top half of the division and the bottom half of the division, there is a massive gap, probably one of the biggest of all the divisions just in terms of skill. And if you are already throwing this kid into a place where he is fighting 13, 10, 8, that type of fighter, he is not far away from getting to the number 4, number 3, number 2. And I just don't want to see a prospect get ruined, especially someone who is so exciting and so charismatic and someone who could be somebody. I just don't want to see him get ruined. I mean, we saw this. I think
you not like this Cirkunov matchup then?
Not really, to be honest.
I mean, it's pretty damn tough, man.
Cirkunov is very good, and it's just a lot very quickly. We saw this. I mean, this isn't a good comparison, but I'm going to make it anyway. But we saw this with Sage Northcutt when he was first in the UFC. He fought like 3 times in like 4 months, and at a certain point, like, it's just too much, especially at like a world-class level. Like, you're just not letting someone recover and get better, because that's when fighters really get better. They'll always tell you that they get better between fights, not in fight camps. Johnny Walker has potential, man. I just don't want to see him get rushed into this. I would like to see them take a slower pace with him, but here we are, and the kid wants to fight. He's got to fight. It's going to be interesting. I mean, I obviously watch. I'm #would-watch on this. I just don't want him to be ruined.
So this is how excited the MMA fighting staff is about Johnny Walker. So Esther and Casey, our intrepid creative duo, video and photo, they landed yesterday in California time at 7 a.m. from Melbourne. And they essentially basically just went right to the Cain Velasquez media lunch in LA yesterday, which was at noon local time and California time. And one of the first things that Esther asked me, because she was on a plane for like 16 hours, was, did Johnny Walker get that fight against Misha Cirkunov? Like, she wanted to know whether or not Johnny Walker was going to be in Las Vegas for UFC 235, because we are going to be in Las Vegas for 235, and we get to see Johnny Walker now fight in person, which we're all very excited about. I mean, to interview him, maybe he'll do the gyration for us at Media Day, Shaun. You think he'll do the gyration? You think he'll move his hips like that?
I think you will certainly ask him, and I look forward to the answer.
So if we're gonna split up the on-camera interviews, can I say right now publicly, can I please do the Johnny Walker interview?
Yeah. I'll give that to you.
I'm gonna hold that to you. It's on tape now. It's on the internet. It is permanent. It is permanent. I am doing the Johnny Walker interview. Anyway.
So do you like this fight?
I feel the same way as you do, but at 205, there's a lot of upward mobility, I guess you could say, in the fact that if you get a couple wins in impressive fashion like he has, there's really only one way for you to go, and that's up the chain pretty quickly, because it's a division that has a lot of veterans, kind of, middling veterans who win some, they lose some. There's not a lot of big stars. Now we've discussed that there are some stars coming up, some bright prospects coming up like Dominic Reyes. I think we said last week, or maybe it was 2 weeks ago, Shaun, that we like someone like a Patrick Cummins or a Jean Volante was kind of,
that would be more of what I would.
Right, because those guys are like, all right, those are real tough guys. And if you beat them, okay, now we know that you can fight the upper echelon of the division. They're kind of like the gatekeepers in that 205 division. So he's getting someone kind of above a gatekeeper. Misha Serkinov is a guy that is also fairly young and a guy that was once considered a prospect. And when he fought Volkan Ozdemir, that was almost that was like a contender fight. Both those guys were kind of on a run there. So it's a tough fight for Walker. We'll find out a lot about him in that fight. Could they have gone a little bit slower with him? Probably, and maybe they should have. But the UFC likes to throw guys into the fire. Let's see if Johnny Walker can handle it.
Yeah, and just to address the second part of that question, Marc and I are going to be at UFC 235. We can't make our picks for Jones Smith yet. We gotta.
Oh yeah.
We gotta leave the suspense there.
Come on.
All right. What's next?
Israel from AC.
Oh wait, 1 second. No respect. Helwani now texting me in the middle of the show too. No respect.
It's unbelievable.
No respect.
I'm texting him back right now.
All right, no, read this question. Come on.
All right. I'm gonna see if he wants to come on with us. I'm gonna bring him on Google Hangouts. Okay, from ACC7, Israel, not the country. Not sure what everyone saw on Saturday. Israel can't be thrilled with this performance. He appeared significantly slower than Silva, which, all right, we'll address this. The shots he did land didn't hurt Silva. Silva is tougher than most, but Israel didn't look dominant in any way. I don't think Israel won the fight.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we'll address all of these points. Shaun, spelled wrong, talked about not a great post so far from ACC7, but it's okay. Shaun talked about the 2 moments of inactivity as being his favorite moments of the fight. That was a little puzzling. Shaun must have loved Francis versus the Black Beast. I honestly don't know what Israel brings to the table in MMA. He's not well-rounded.
Oh my God.
His own skill set doesn't appear to be something that can't be overcome. He doesn't have killer instinct. He'll pay for that against someone who does. Whitaker beats him. Kelvin beats him. Because his skill set is so limited, Rockhold beats him. Obviously, Yoel beats him. I would think that most top middleweights would be asking for this fight, especially while the MMA community is mystified by Israel.
Oh my Lord. What a
wow.
That was some hater in that. Oh my gosh. He is very much in the anti-Israel Adesanya train. So a couple points to note. One, Shaun with a W must have loved Francis versus Black Beast. I absolutely love Francis versus Black Beast.
We know you did.
It was one of my favorite fights ever. I got to make this man on the other side of the screen do a damn shoey out of my shoe and hawk a big loogie in that thing because that fight. I will love that fight until the end of time. That's a top 5 fight in history, and I'm standing pat on that. But as for the rest, man, I mean, if you watch that and if you watched Israel versus Anderson and your takeaway was, wow, Izzy looks slow, I think you're missing the point a little bit. I would also like to hear you explain why you think Anderson won, because I just don't feel like you actually have an actual argument there, but I would just be curious to hear it, because who knows, maybe it's interesting.
I feel like ACC7 really hates Israel Adesanya and was going into that, was taking that into the fight with him. If you think that Anderson Silva won that fight, look, who is a bigger Anderson Silva stan than me? I didn't think Anderson Silva won that fight. That is absurd to think that. That's ridiculous.
Yeah. So a couple things though, right? Because you watch that and wow, Izzy looks slow. Izzy's game is not really and never really has been predicated on speed, right? Because he's a fast guy, but he's not the fastest striker. Instead, he's more of a it's predicated on like mastery of several different dimensions of the actual striking game, right? From the distance to kind of like the anticipation. He lays all these traps and his ability to just really adjust and like think on the fly. He's very cerebral in there. And to a point where like in fights like the Silva one, and even like you go back to Brad Tavares where he has 25 minutes to work, when you see this guy really get going and start feeling himself, like it is gorgeous to watch, man. I was, again, sorry to reference this back from early in the show, but I was talking to Ferdinand Lopez, Ngannou's coach, about this fight. And he is just, as a coach, he was saying, when you watch two strikers be able to do what they were doing and just the subtle things, the mastery, again, the laying of the traps and just kind of the adjustments on the fly, it's just incredible as a coach to watch. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know how you come away from that fight with that takeaway. I will say, though, there is a little bit of merit to some of the things he's saying, because I do wonder if at some point, and I think this is probably why I have not picked Israel yet to be a future champion, or to be Rob Whittaker, I should say. I wonder if at some point his size is just going to come back to hurt him, because he is not a particularly big middleweight and he doesn't cut a lot of weight. And I think if someone can effectively close the distance and bully him, I would just really like to see how he handles that, because again, he's not very just broad. He's a lanky guy and he's a tall guy, but he's not like a big guy. And I think someone like a Romero or even like a Chris Weidman, sort of with that size and that wrestling, could make. I would just really like to see how he handles it. But otherwise, man, he is a sensational striker. He is super intriguing matchup for basically anyone at this middleweight division right now. And he is so damn charismatic. I don't know how someone could hate him in that way, I guess.
Yeah, this is a weird one. I find myself, we're not usually this diametrically opposed to questions that we get. I could not disagree more with ACC 7. Now, was the Anderson Silva fight Israel Adesanya's best performance? No, of course not. And I think there's a lot of reasons that go into that. One of them being that Anderson Silva is one of his idols, and maybe he didn't want to push it and try to knock out Anderson Silva. It's very possible. But the way that man looked against Derek Brunson, who, by the way, is a very tough dude. You know, one of the top middleweights, at least a top 10, maybe even a top 5 middleweight. Completely dominated.
Yeah, let's not get too crazy.
You don't think Brunson's top 5? I mean, top 10, top 7,
top 10 for sure. Top 10 for sure.
Fine. So, and also a guy that has a wrestling background, although he doesn't always use it to hit, sometimes to his detriment. I wasn't more impressed with Adesanya in this fight against Silva than I have been in the past. But I would say for ACC 7, although it seems like your mind is already made up, go back and watch Luke Thomas's breakdown of Adesanya from Monday on the Monday Morning Analyst. It's up on the MMAfighting.com YouTube page, and he does a really good job explaining what makes Adesanya's striking so damn good, and it is damn good. But like you, I would not mind seeing Adesanya against a wrestler of that caliber. But look, when you have the charisma that Adesanya has, when you have the star power and the potential ability to draw money for the UFC, you're going to get matchups that are going to point you in that direction, like an Anderson Silva. So I would not be surprised if he doesn't face a wrestler like a Chris Weidman or even like a Jacare before he gets the shot against either Whittaker or Gastelum or however that shapes up. Just the way it goes. I mean, that's just how, you know, if someone's going to make money for you, again, this is not a league, it's a promotion. Please keep that in mind. So ACC 7, I mean, look, it seems like you don't like the guy. That's fine. Everyone's entitled to their opinion, but I disagree with a lot of that. And also, the notion that Israel lost the fight is just wrong. That's not an opinion. That's just wrong.
All right. We'll leave it at that. Next question coming from a good friend, Lucian, on the MMA Fighting page. He wants to know about Robert Whittaker's comments on UFC pay. I'm sorry. Hopefully the year of the pig has been joyous for both of you so far. The intros on these questions are fantastic. I love you guys. So much positivity. As you probably saw, during the build-up for UFC 234, Robert Whittaker gave an interview to an Australian paper where it stated that fighters are underpaid due to the UFC owning the sport. I did not see that, but I'm sure he did. That's that. My curiosity on this isn't that do you agree? Okay. But rather, how frustrating do you feel after continuously seeing comments like these from fighters who then as a whole rebuff all attempts at unionization and collective bargaining? And have you given up on the subject as much as Luke Thomas stated that he has? And so this is an interesting question. I didn't see Robert Whitaker's comments, but I mean, that's good for him for making those comments. I mean, we've talked about this a lot on this program, Marc. I mean, we've both been on the front lines of a lot of this topic in general. I mean, when you go all the way back to the PFA, and then I mean, we were there for the initial PFA meeting. You go back to Project Spearhead, all of these different movements. We have followed it from beginning to end, the MMA AAAA or wherever that was called. I will say, I feel like probably at some point last year, I got to the same place Luke is, where it's just like at some point, I can't be the one that cares about this issue more than the fighters. And I felt like we as a collective media got to a point where we cared about this more than the fighters, or at least outwardly. Maybe internally, that's wrong, but outwardly, it definitely felt like that. And at a certain point, I throw up my hands and it is what it is. And I can't be the person always harping on this same subject when it seems like it's very one-sided. So I don't know if you share my opinion, Marc, but I feel like I am certainly at that place. And I know I've said it on this show before where it's just like, I can't care about this as much as I used to because it doesn't feel like the other side is reciprocated.
Yeah. I mean, what Luke has been saying for, I mean, a while now is the media can't care more about this than the fighters do. And it seems like we do. And it makes it hard to continue talking about it and continue writing about it, because if there's really no interest, you know, we're as journalists, as media, you know, we're advocates for, I mean, I guess we're advocates for fairness, and we are advocates for our readership. And I wouldn't say that we're advocates for fighters necessarily more than we're advocates for anybody else, but we're advocates for fairness and for the truth and for what is real and what is not. And I think everyone knows by now, including a lot of fighters, know what is real and what is not when it comes to the UFC and the situation. And I think a lot of media outlets in MMA have done a fairly decent job pointing that out time and time again. And I would say MMAfighting.com is one of them. I've written a lot about a lot of this stuff, unionization, Project Spearhead, the MMA AAA. You know, we've done a lot of coverage of this stuff, and it can't get to the point where it's people don't care anymore. Then, you know, if people don't care, then it's our job to move on to other things. I mean, that's kind of how it goes. So I kind of agree with Luke, and I kind of agree with you that if they don't care, if the fighters are fine with it, then what are we, you know, what's in our place to do? And we're still gonna write about these things as they come, and I think there's still significance and importance in writing about the topics of the day in MMA, and this is a constant topic, but it's a weird situation. It's just I feel like, I don't even know if I'm answering the question correctly, but Whitaker's comments are not wrong. I missed them last week. It was from an Australian media outlet. I didn't see them until I think on Sunday. I saw them for the first time, and it's interesting. And if you talk to Rob Whitaker, and I have a couple times, he doesn't say stuff like that often, but you can tell that he's not like Mr. Company Man. You know, he will speak his mind on different topics. And I'm not saying that as an insult. I'm saying that I think he is a company man in a sense, and I think he loves what he does, and I think he loves to fight, but he doesn't kowtow to the UFC the way that some others do. And so it's not entirely surprising that he said that about the UFC. Although he may be you know, talking a different tune now because they helped him out a lot with his surgery, and they were there for him, and they made sure he got the right you know, the right healthcare and the right stuff and the right care, I guess, in general, for this hernia surgery that he just went under on Sunday. So maybe he feels differently now, but it's not wrong. I mean, the UFC has the bulk of the market share. And then our next question is kind of about this too, but they have all the leverage, and we've said it so many times. When a fighter does have some leverage, when he or she is a champion and has some of that leverage, you have to use it, because the UFC will always use it against you. They will always use it against you when they have it. So when you have it, you have to use it.
Yeah, and like you said, the next question is very much about this too, so we'll just hit that quickly. It's a very long question. It's coming from Ian McInerney.
Yeah, you can't read this whole thing, Ian.
And I'm not going to read this whole thing out loud, but effectively I'll read the beginning. Hey guys, as a newly minted lawyer, congratulations on that, by the way, Ian. Looking over Eddie Alvarez's old UFC contract, how are so many current MMA managers still working? Have the fighters still not realized they need to collectively bargain? Some of these contract terms are absolutely insane. And then he lists about 14 different examples of language from the contracts. And then he asks, I ask again, how has nothing changed yet? If anything, it feels like the UFC has tightened its grip. This is more of the same type of answer that we're just talking about, because there isn't really a push. There is no collective action. MMA is so singular. All of these fighters are so, it is so mercurial, man. And the main problem is that, I mean, you talk about the managers. There's no actual leverage, right? Because for 99% of fighters, there is no actual leverage. Unless you're a Conor McGregor, a John Jones, a Ronda Rousey, it doesn't really matter. You're replaceable in their eyes. Even if you're a top 10 guy, if you're a top 5 guy, you look at Roy McDonald, Gegard Mousasi, they lost him and they just keep moving forward, man. Other people fill that spot. All of these fighters,
they have not lost a penny on losing those guys. The UFC is not.
Yeah.
They're not losing money when they lose a Ryan Bader. Unfortunately, that's just how it goes. Everyone
except the 1% in this sport is absolutely replaceable in the UFC's eyes. I mean, and that's always been the case. If you remember back in the day, this is an old reference, but you remember back when the UFC cut basically the entirety of AKA Jim just because John Fitch didn't want to sign away his likeness in perpetuity for a video game without getting some kind of fair compensation. Like, that's a very fair and decent request. And they just cut the entire gym. They don't care. And because they know there will be other people to come and fill those spots. And so that you're asking how this is still a thing. That's more or less why is there's no leverage except for the very few. And those very few, the Conor McGregors, the John Jones, they don't have the same type of contracts. You think Conor McGregor has an exact same contract as X fighter or fighter B, who's the number 8 ranked lightweight or whoever? He has a very specialized contract, and he is able to put his own language in there. Same with the John Jones, same with a Ronda Rousey or something, because they have reached that place where they are no longer, where they are not as replaceable. And so unless you get to that point, that's you don't have the ability to even begin to walk forward with those negotiations.
Yeah, I mean, and fighters, at the end of the day, fighters fight. Most of them don't really fight for the money in the sense that they didn't really get into MMA because they wanted to get rich. I would say 90-something% of fighters didn't say, I'm going to be an MMA fighter so I can get rich. No, I don't think many people are saying that. They do it because they do love to fight. They love the competition, and they have a drive to be the best they can possibly be. And they're a lot of, they're martial artists and they love to train, and that's why they do it. And the fact that people pay them for it, I feel like some fighters, and not all fighters, are like, wow, I get paid to do this. That's actually kind of cool. Now, what gets lost in that is that the UFC literally cannot put on events without fighters to fight. So even though only the top 1% actually draw big money for the UFC, there is literally no UFC unless there are fighters willing to step into the cage and do it. And the UFC pretty much has the leverage over the 99% because they are, I don't want to say they're the only game in town, but if you really want to be the best in the world, you have to kind of do it in the UFC. I mean, that's the perception, at least. I'm not sure if I'm 100% in agreement with that, but that is the perception, and that is how many people feel. Now, Bellator is a great alternative. I think that PFL has done some cool things. They're giving away $1 million to winners of tournaments. Rise and won championship. There are other options out there where I think you can make a case to being the best in the world, but for all intents and purposes, you understand what I'm saying, Shaun, that if you're a fighter, the goal is almost always to be in the UFC. Now, if you're a fighter and you want to make the most money possible, then maybe the UFC is not the biggest goal for you. Maybe elsewhere is okay, because you can probably get paid pretty well in Bellator, certainly in One and in Ryzen, and on and on and on. You can make $1 million in PFL. So that's really what it is. And the UFC has a stranglehold on the marketplace, and like you said, they have all the leverage, and it's just very tough to get out from under that without collective bargaining, without the Ali Act. Even the Ali Act would make things better for fighters, at least in the interim.
Yes,
I'm a little long-winded. You're giving me like the Oscars, like, let's cut it sign. Where's the music?
Well, we have a lot of green questions today, so I want to get to all of them.
You can go long. It's fine. What else are you doing today? You got nothing else?
I got a lot going on today, but we will go long if we need to, because we are here. By the way, people.
How's your dog? How's Evie?
She's underneath me right now. She is all medicationed up.
Oh no.
We had to take her to the vet this week. That's what Marc's referring to. I don't know. It's not the best situation, but she seems to be doing better, so that's good. Keep this moving. Next question's coming from Haydock06 again, who wants to look back on this past weekend and asks about Robert Whittaker, another champion having his career stolen by injuries. He writes, "Is Whittaker going the same was as Cruz and Cain?" Okay, is Whittaker going the same was as Cruz and Cain in having his career derailed through injuries whilst he is at the top? The UFC will not be able to trust him headlining a card without a top co-main replacement fighter, given he has pulled out of 2 cards in the last 18 months. He also appears to struggle to fight more than once a year, a shame for such a great fighter. Is it best for Whittaker to play the long game and maybe sit out a couple years until he is right and rested? He is only 28 after all. Are there any learnings from Cruz and Cain's career that we can apply to him? So this is an interesting question, Marc. I mean, just how's it hit you immediately? Robert Whittaker, is he going down this same road that we've seen from other past champions like a Dominic Cruz, like a Cain Velasquez?
Well, I hope not. I mean, I hope we get to see Robert Whittaker as much as possible, because he is a great fighter, and he's never in a boring fight. He's always exciting to watch. It's just unfortunate how it goes with some people, and some of it is just sheer bad luck. Some of it, I mean, I guess you could say it's bad training habits or practices. I don't know. That may not even be the case. It may just be bad luck. And I mean, I know that American Kickboxing Academy, they've had guys who have injury issues, and there are a bunch of killers at that camp, and it might be the best training camp on the planet. It's produced a ridiculous amount of elite fighters, but guys do get hurt because maybe they are going hard in training. But
I feel like that's an old narrative, though. I feel like AKA has changed that. There's not nearly as many injuries.
Not as much. But I was asking Cain Velasquez at the media lunch Tuesday in LA about that, and he said, I asked him, is there at least a balance of hard training, but not to the point where you're not going to make the fight? Because if you can't make the fight, then what the hell is the point of the hard training? You don't even get paid for all that. And he said, and he pretty much said no. He pretty much said, in order to be the Cain Velasquez that I know that I can be, I need to train as hard as possible. Otherwise, it isn't even worth it. So that's why he goes full bore, and I guess that's why he gets hurt. And I don't know if that's the same case with Robert Whittaker. I'm not sure. This seems like a weird freak thing. The hernia. That's a strange one. Which, by the way, I wanted to make a point here, and this seems like a good time. What's funny about the Whittaker situation, and I guess the injury or illness, whatever you want to call it, is that I would bet money that he would not have even known that he had a hernia unless he cut weight before the fight.
Yes, I agree with you.
So, and this is crazy for me to say, because you know how I feel about weight cutting. The weight cut might have actually saved Robert Whittaker from serious injury in a weird, indirect way. Because let's say there's no weight cut and he just goes in fighting the same way that he goes into training. He would not have known. He may have had some discomfort in his stomach, but he would not have had the serious pain that he had when he was trying to rehydrate. Because it was really during the rehydration process when that really became apparent and the symptoms really came out. Because he's such a tough, crazy dude, just inhumanly tough, that he was training with a hernia this entire time. And it only really became unbearable when he cut weight and then had to put the weight back on because his body was not allowing him to rehydrate and put that stuff back in after the weight cut. So if he just fought like he went to training every day, he probably would have fought Kelvin Gastelum with a freaking hernia, and who knows what would have happened. So in some ways, the weight cut was a blessing. I'll never say that again, but I think in this case it was.
Yeah, you're not wrong in that regard. And to revisit the question at hand, I'm going to go ahead and say no. I don't think we're going down this same road with Robert Whittaker that we have gone down with other champions of the past, like a Dominic Cruz. And that the sole reason for that is because most of these things the last 18 months have been super weird, fluke, bizarre injuries, right? Because one of them, I mean, this one obviously was very strange. No one saw this coming. This isn't something a symptom of somebody being injury prone. This is just something random that happened. The other one was chicken pox, which same thing. That's just strange. That's not someone tearing their knee. Before that though, man, before Robert Whittaker was champion, he was fighting often. He was fighting 2 times a year, 3 times a year, basically every single year. 2018 was the first time in his entire career that he only fought once in a year. And so I don't know. Yes, he has dealt with a very bad run of luck lately, especially with these Australia shows, man. You can feel for the guy. This is now 2 where he's had to pull out of his hometown show, and this one was last second. But I don't think that means that he is now this new injury-prone guy. I think we can still trust Robert Whittaker to some extent to be able to make the fight, because this is really a bunch of freak things happening in a row, and sometimes that just happens. Sometimes people just have to deal with something like that, and then they move on to the next chapter of their career, and they're fine.
You just kind of touched on something that we talked about a few minutes ago about leverage, and perhaps the reason why Whittaker is not fighting as often as he did before he was the champion is because he's the champion now, and with that comes benefits, and you want to hold the belt as long as you can for financial reasons, because you make a lot more money when you have the title than when you don't, and there is a measure of leverage when you're a champion. So you want to go into fights as healthy as possible because you want the best possible chance to hold on to the title, whereas when he was a contender, it's better to stay active and try to earn that title shot. And sometimes you fight through injuries. Sometimes, you go into, a fight not 100% healthy. A lot of times you do. So that could also be part of it too. Whereas he wants to keep, I mean, that's how it goes. I mean, look at other champions. Look at Tyron Woodley. I mean, he's taken a much more tactical approach since he's been champion, and he's not rushed back from injuries the way that people want him to, because you want to keep the belt, and I understand that.
Yeah. Next question coming from GQF1. And this is our second Johnny Walker question of the day.
Everyone loves Johnny Walker, man. We got 2 questions.
The people love Black Label. Assuming Johnny Walker cruises by Misha Cirkunov, he writes, that is a heavy assumption. Which gatekeeper should he face next? OSP, Manoa, or Glover? Or are these guys too much too soon? Cheers from Brazil. We already talked about this a little bit, so we don't really need to hit this too much. I still feel like those guys are too much too soon, but if you gave me those 3 and you said, in this world, Johnny Walker cruises by Misha Cirkunov and does something spectacular, I would give him OSP. To me, that's the next rung up. I just do not want to fast track this guy. I'd like to see him get some chance to grow.
I agree. I would also say OSP, and a lot of that too is because I want to see Manoa kind of go back and fight some guys and try to work his way back up. Because I still think that he is a promising light heavyweight. I know he's a little bit older, but he's so exciting, and I think that he's just fun to watch. So I'd like to see him build himself back up and not fight a contender like him.
Oh my God, Raimondi!
I don't know how to mute it.
Mute your phone.
All right. Not even my phone. It's whatever. Let's move on.
Right, we're moving on.
From Stonerhead.
All right, you got it.
Stonerhead. Hold on, I'm muting this. From Stonerhead. Hey, Shaun and Marc. Hope you both are having a wonderful Wednesday. After being called out / criticized for my spelling 2 weeks in a row by Mr. Raimondi. My question is, thanks, Stonerhead. Maybe you laid off the bong today. My question is, have you guys ever been criticized or called out by a fighter or their management team? By the way, there is spelled wrong, Stonerhead. I'm sorry.
Oh my goodness.
For something you have reported or over an article you have writing ? I want whatever Stonerhead is having this morning. So anyway, P.S. I also know what it's like to work with a grumpy little man. So I feel your pain, Shaun. Maybe Marc could reverse apply his advice to me and pick up the bong now and again. Love the show, guys. That could be the case.
Stonerhead, you are becoming one of my guys.
What would the A side look like if we were just both just trash, just stoned, just baked going in?
It would probably be super
baked.
boring.
Is that I'm a huge square, aren't I?
Yeah, you are. It would probably be super boring.
It would just boring. It'd just be like, hey. I don't even know because I don't smoke and I never really have. I never really have.
Well, Stonerhead will come. He'll give you the bong, and you can hit the bong, and it'll be good and good. So, question:
we're going to this wrestling show on Memorial Day weekend in Las Vegas, where, by the way, marijuana is legal. Should we get messed up? Should we smoke together?
Are you asking me this on air or off air?
I mean, we are live. We are live, Shaun. We are live.
So I'm gonna go ahead and continue on with
the are listening to this, right?
I'm gonna go ahead.
It's legal in Nevada.
Have managers or fighters ever gotten mad at you? Yes. That happens. I know that's definitely a thing that's happened to you. That's definitely a thing that's happened to me. For the most part, my experiences have been relatively simple. A quick phone call. You reach out. If you talk to someone man to man or man to woman or just person to person, usually it's pretty easy to smooth things out or just to at least allow your side to breathe a little bit, your side of the story to breathe a little bit. Over social media, things get very can get very silly and unhinged very quickly, but usually a quick phone call can fix anything. I've never had like an actual serious problem where someone has some kind of long-standing beef with me.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much the same for me. Although I'm sure there are people who will probably hate me in MMA. Yeah, no, it happens regularly. I mean, that's just how it. First of all, we wouldn't be doing our jobs correctly if there wasn't some, I guess, irritation on the people that we cover, and that's not the goal. That's not what we're trying to do. But when you try to do the job as a journalist and you try to put the facts out there, people are gonna get upset because they don't like how you said it. They don't like how you wrote it. I mean, that's just how it goes. I mean, there's no way around it, and I get that too because I understand their perspective, and it's very hard to tell someone else's story for them, and that's kind of what we do. And a lot of these people allow us to do that on a regular basis, and I feel grateful for that. And sometimes they don't like the way we do it, so that's just part of the business, I think.
Yeah. Next question coming from Javier DLC on the MMA Fighting page, who's asking about this weekend. If Vintage Cain comes back against Francis.
Sea-level Cain.
Sea-level Cain. Hey, Phoenix is not a very elevated city. There's not much elevation here. It's sea level. If Vintage Cain comes back against Francis, how would you see a bout between him and Jon Jones play out? Am I the only one excited for this possible matchup, even more than a DC trilogy fight at heavyweight? That's an interesting question. I would say I would still want the DC trilogy fight at heavyweight more, but I know that this is a matchup that they have definitely, that Cain and DC have definitely talked about amongst themselves. I mean, when I was speaking to Cain last month, I asked him, would that be a matchup you would relish? Would you enjoy the opportunity, maybe a little more than the rest, to be able to meet Jon Jones, welcome him to heavyweight? And I expected him to give a very non-answer, and he did not do that. He said, yes, I absolutely would. That is a beef that is long-standing. There is a lot of history there. DC's his guy, ride or die forever. And if your best friend was continually, perpetually teased and bothered and how all these awful things happen in his life because of this other person, you would hold that person in that same way as I would imagine Cain does with Jon Jones. So I would love to see that fight. I think that would be fascinating. I think that Jon Jones would not be able to get under the skin of Cain in a way that he can with DC. I think Cain is much more stoic, and he might be able to get under Cain's skin in a way, but it might be a Khabib type of way where you're just making it worse for yourself. I would love that matchup. It's stylistically, it's a fun fight too. Cain is a very pressure-heavy guy, similar to DC, but different in ways. I think it would be interesting to watch how Jon Jones deal with it.
Of course, I'd love to see that fight. I mean, who wouldn't? I don't think you're a fight fan if you don't want to see, perhaps, barring injuries, maybe the best heavyweight of all time against probably the best fighter of all time. Of course, that's a ridiculously good fight. Whether it will happen or not, I don't think it'll happen. I think that Jon Jones, look, if he's saying that it's going to take a lot of money for him to go up to heavyweight to fight Daniel Cormier, I would imagine that it would take even more to get him to fight Cain Velasquez, because Cormier is the rivalry fight. That's the one that people that's the one that's probably going to it'll make more money probably than Cain versus Jon Jones. Although I think that will do very well as well. But yeah, I don't see it happening. I think that Jon Jones is very happy right now at 205. I think that he's lost a lot of time and he wants to cement himself once again as the dominant light heavyweight champion.
Next up, and this is a good one. I'm glad. All right. Oh, there we go. Stonerhead, you're my guy. All right. You're pal, Stonerhead. This one coming about MVP versus Daly, and I'm glad someone asked us. Being from the UK, I am really excited to see this fight. How do you guys see this one playing out, and who do you have winning? So MVP versus Daly is this week, Marc. Some people are calling it the biggest fight in UK history. I'm not from the UK, so it's hard for me to say that. I feel like it has been significantly underpromoted. I will say that. I wasn't aware that it was even this week until basically the start of this week. But now that it is here in good old Connecticut of all places, what are your thoughts on MVP Daly?
I like how the biggest fight in UK history is happening in New England, not regular England. What's up with that?
See, this is why we leave the puns to you. That was great.
Why? Don't patronize me, Shaun.
So what do you think? MVP Daly, thoughts?
No, I mean, I love it. First of all, I mean, those two guys are promoting it well with their mouths. I mean, I think those guys talk a lot of crap, and they're both extremely entertaining guys to listen to and also to watch fight. As far as how and the way I see it going, I still have to pick Daly. And I think that I say that because I don't think that MVP has fought a fighter of Daly's caliber yet. And I know Daly may not be the same guy that he was a few years ago, but I still think, I mean, Daly can still crack, man. And MVP is a ridiculous striker, but I think that Daly is a little bit more well-rounded and he's more experienced. I mean, Daly's been in there with some really, really good fighters. He's fought a ton. I mean, he's been in the UFC. He's been in Strikeforce. The first round against Nick Diaz that Daly had was still one of my favorite rounds of all time. So I'm gonna pick Daly. You know, gun to my head. Could MVP pull it off? He could, but he's been somewhat inactive. He only fought once last year. That was his first fight since 2016. Like I don't feel like he's really getting he's not being as active as Bellator needs him to be the star that people thought he would be. If he beats Daly, though, that could all change. And this is the tournament, so he's gonna move on and fight someone very tough next too. So I'm really excited for the fight, but I'm gonna probably pick Daly as it is right now.
I am beyond excited for this fight, man, because we have been covering Michael Page. I can't even, when he made his UFC debut, or not, I'm sorry, not UFC debut, MMA debut against Ben Dishman, and he did that tornado kick out of nowhere. I was still running the morning report on MMA fighting, and I found that video and I put it on the morning report. And I have just been, I became obsessed with that guy for a little bit of just like watching his fights and just watching his come up. And I very early on in his career, I wrote a big feature about, you know, let's not judge this person too soon. Let's not rush to judgment. Let's let these prospects develop and become something. And instead of being like, hey, we haven't seen this guy again. It's a wrestler yet. It's just, well, he's still new. Let him figure it out. That was 4 years ago, 5 years ago. We still don't have answers to that question, man. No. And that is why I am so excited about this fight, because we have been waiting for this moment. And Paul Daly's not even a wrestler, but we have just been waiting for this moment for years and years at this point. I agree with you. I think Bellator has dropped the ball a bit on the way they have handled MVP throughout his career.
Not entirely their fault.
Not entirely their fault, but he just fights very infrequently. And he's not
also
fighting
like boxing, like
he's doing other things. He's not fighting opponents that have been very relevant. He's not fighting opponents that have been very, challenging. Paul Daly, though, is someone, but like you said, Paul Daly has been in there with the best of the best, and he may be in his late 30s at this point, but he is still as good as he ever has been. I mean, you saw him against Lorenz Larkin. That was an incredible knockout. I am so excited for this fight. I am also picking Daly, but that is purely because I just do not know what MVP is yet. All these years later, I still have no actual concept of what MVP is and how good he can be, how good he even is right now. His ceiling is still an absolute question mark, and that sucks. But I think that we're going to have answers for that question mark this year with that welterweight tournament. So I am super stoked for this. I wish it was being promoted a little more in my face. I haven't seen a lot of promotion from Bellator about it, but I'm excited, and I'm also glad that it's on Saturday and the UFC is on Sunday, because now we get a chance to enjoy both of these cards as opposed to having to split your time. If the UFC was Saturday, having to split your time between the two, now we get to enjoy both. It's going to be a fun weekend.
By the way, the winner of that fight, MVP versus Daly, fights Douglas Lima in the next round of the Bellator Welterweight World Grand Prix.
That's what I'm talking about. That's what I need to see. Wow. That's exactly what I'm talking about.
Whoever wins that fight is going to be phenomenal.
Yeah.
Either one of those guys. Next up from the comments, we have a lot of doubles. I'm going to skip over you, BCG, because we kind of already talked a lot about Cain.
Okay.
Right on your stoner head.
Yeah, gotcha.
Talked about Cain. I mean, we can talk about Anderson Silva a little bit, or should we skip over this?
Let's probably skip it. I mean, we got some Twitter questions too.
All right, here we go. Fantasy matchups. This is from BCG347. So we're answering one of your questions at least. Who wins? And this is a list. So I'll go one by one, Shaun. First one: Francis Ngannou versus Anthony Rumble Johnson. By the way, before you answer, when I saw on Twitter a few weeks ago that Anthony Rumble Johnson had joined bare knuckle boxing, bare knuckle FC. I about lost my mind. I broke out into like a cold sweat. I was like shaking. I was like, oh my God, someone is about to get murdered. And then I find out that Rumble Johnson's only joining bare knuckle FC as an ambassador, as a fighter relations, which, hey, great for him. Make some money. But man, that man in bare knuckle, oh my goodness. Oh,
I echo everything you just said. My sentiment when I saw that was, oh Jesus, they're about to get someone murdered.
Someone about to die in Biloxi, Mississippi, my man. If Rumble Johnson's fighting bare knuckle.
So for this question,
yes, Ngannou versus Rumble.
I need you to answer me a caveat before I give you an answer. Are you talking 2 years ago, 205 Anthony Johnson, or are you talking about right now, bodybuilder, looking 300 pounds Anthony Johnson?
Right. Freaking now.
That wins? Dude is obscenely massive at this point in the scariest possible way. So I would say Francis, but I have no idea. I would love to see this version of Rumble come back and see what he could do at heavyweight. I mean, Jesus Christ, that guy is massive.
Good God. I really want Rumble to come back. I mean, I felt like he went away too soon. The guy is just so damn exciting and just so damn
him versus Jones. Him versus Jones is still one I would love to see.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I would pick right now. I'd pick Ngannou because I don't think Anthony Johnson is in fighting shape. If he were, I don't know. He may be my pick, but right now I'd say Ngannou. Israel Adesanya versus Wonderboy Thompson.
Ooh, that would be such a fascinating striking matchup. We're talking about all the traps being laid with the Silva fight and everything. That would be same thing, man. That would be chef's kiss to watch. But I'll go Izzy. I think he's bigger. He's obviously, I mean, he's a middleweight compared to a welterweight. I think he's just bigger. And I think Stephen Thompson he would play well in Stephen Thompson's strategy of always letting guys come to him. I think Israel would find just very interesting ways to counter that.
I would love to see this fight. And I don't think they're that far apart in weight, because Adesanya is a small middleweight, and Thompson certainly cuts probably from somewhere in like the 190s to fight at welterweight. There would be like a height difference though, because I mean, how tall is Israel? Like 6'2", 6'3",
something like that.
6'4". Okay, I don't know if he's 6'4". John Jones is 6'4". I don't know if he's as tall as John Jones. So there would definitely be a height and reach advantage for Izzy in that fight. Would probably pick him because of that reach advantage, but I want to see like 10 rounds of that fight. Like, I mean, give me 10 rounds of those guys, 3-minute rounds in an octagon, and I will pay any amount of money. That would be a masterpiece. Max Holloway versus Tony Ferguson.
Oh God, these are good matchups. Tony Ferg, you know where I'm going. I feel like that he's still the man, and I will not change my opinion until I am proven otherwise.
And also guys that are not that far apart in weight. I mean, these guys are probably walk around a similar weight. I would say.
No, I don't know about that. Tony Ferguson gets big.
He does. That's true. Ferguson probably is above 200 pounds. I don't know if Holloway gets quite that big, but it wouldn't be crazy. It wouldn't be a crazy weight differential. I would say Holloway, man. I think Holloway wins that. Holloway is just so solid everywhere.
Hater.
So solid. Ferguson gets caught a lot, and I think Holloway finds him.
You have never been on the Tony Ferguson train, and when he is the champion,
that's not true, man. Look, Tony Ferguson is one of my favorite fighters to watch.
I'm just busting your balls.
Tyron Woodley versus Khabib Nurmagomedov.
Damn, that would be fun.
BCG is bringing the heat with these matchups. I'm getting excited.
Oh man, I guess Woodley because of the size. Other than that, I have no idea. I would love to see that. I have genuinely no idea what that would look like, just styles-wise. That would be crazy to watch.
I want to see this one. I hope it happens. It probably won't, but I'm gonna say Khabib. I think Khabib wins that fight. Khabib is just I love Woodley. I think he's fantastic, and he's so smart. But gun to my head, I'm gonna say Khabib. Next. Current day Anderson Silva versus GSP. Yes, give it to me. That's what I need. Silva versus GSP in 2019. Who'd you pick?
I think I would pick GSP. GSP, but I wouldn't feel really strongly about it.
I would pick GSP too because I feel like for Silva to be truly at his best right now at 43, almost 44 years old, he needs to fight someone who who he doesn't have to worry about getting taken down against. I think that's really the key. That's why he looks so good against Adesanya, I think, because he doesn't have to worry about a takedown. He can kind of do his crazy spider stuff without fear of that. So
also,
I mean,
what weight class would that be? Because GSP would not fight at 185 again. So if Silva has to cut more weight, that would also lead me more towards GSP.
True. 180 maybe? I mean, that's what Silva's saying. He wants McGregor at 180.
Jeez, I'm sure he does.
So do I. Moving on.
Yeah. Last one coming from the comments. Nick Diesel wants to know about lightweight back-end booking. Is Gregor Gillespie versus Charles Oliveira the best fight outside of the top 10 to make? That's a good question. Also, Lando Venata had a high-profile mismatch. Is Jim Miller the step-up he needs? Personally, I would like to see Alex slide in against Miller. Either way, we can get these. Can we get these off Fight Pass prelims? And then he adds that he meant Alex Hernandez against Jim Miller. So first part of that question, Gregor Gillespie versus Charles Oliveira, is that the best fight outside of the top 10 you can make? That might be.
It's a damn good fight.
That very well might be, man. Charles Oliveira, for however much he talks about wanting to go back to featherweight, and he always talks about wanting to go back to featherweight, that man has looked like such a relentless destroyer of worlds at 155, man. I have been so damn impressed with what that guy has done at 155. And Gregor Gillespie might be one of the best prospects in the entire UFC. So that would be a tremendous fight.
Absolutely. I love that. I love that idea because it would be two fighters who are kind of going in there with completely different mindsets. Gillespie is going out there to grind you out and win a decision, whereas Charles Oliveira is trying to submit you from the moment that the fight starts, or knock you out from the moment the fight begins until the end. It would be a very fascinating fight. I dig Lando Venata versus Jim Miller. I also wouldn't mind Alex Hernandez versus Jim Miller. I think either one of those would make sense. Probably just would depend on timing.
Yeah, I agree with both of those. I agree with everything you said there.
All right, we're done. We're done with our green comments. We can move on to some from the Twitter machine.
All right.
Do you have anything? We're getting we got a weed recommendation from Nikki on Twitter.
I like that. That's good.
Vegas weed is beyond dry and not worth the markup. He wants us to come to Long Beach.
Good to know. Let's see.
She invited us to Long Beach, and this, she says, quote, "This OG will smoke you out with the good shit." All right. I'll keep that under advisement, Nikki. Thank you.
All right, I got one here, and I lost it. No, here we go. This one's coming from Chris at YYZYEG. Hey guys, today we heard that Artem the Goat is facing Hick Diaz on 420 for Bare Knuckle FC. This is perfect on so many levels, he writes. What fights have been made or should be made that had the same level of fun and potential? Adesanya versus Till comes to mind. Thanks. I love that. By the way, that fight he's talking about, Jason Knight versus Artem Lobov for Bare Knuckle FC.
That's beautiful.
It's great
matchmaking, Bare Knuckle FC. Holy crap, that's great.
So what else? What are other fun fights like that you could think of?
Well, I mean, honestly, BCG in the MMA fighting comments just kind of came up with a couple of good ones. Adesanya versus Wonder Boy. I mean, that would be fantastic. How about Conor McGregor versus Anderson? How about like McGregor versus Justin Gaethje? I mean, Justin Gaethje versus pretty much anyone on the planet is exciting.
True that. I echo the Justin Gaethje sentiment. Also, our good friend Dustin Love on Twitter just said, what about Charles Oliveira versus Bryan Ortega?
Ooh.
Oh my God.
Not at 145 though. I'm sorry.
No. At 155? Oh, yeah. Please give me that.
Oh yeah. Fantastic. That would be great. I mean, there are so many. I mean, there are so many interesting fights that could be done.
Anderson Silva versus Fedor Emelianenko.
What's that?
Anderson Silva versus Fedor Emelianenko.
Okay, so you always crap on me for my Anderson Silva matchmaking. Is that a real idea that you're having?
Dude, are you not #would watch for that?
Of course I am, but I'm asking you if you're being serious.
No, I'm being super serious. That would be great. That's exactly the type of fight I want Anderson to take at this point.
I'd be down. I don't know how it could happen, but I would love it to happen. That would be cool. I'm not sure what weight class that would be. I guess Anderson would just have to go in as a heavyweight like he did against DC and weigh in at like 2. What did he weigh in for that fight against DC?
Well, he was coming off that surgery. So
205.
He was like 203 maybe, or 201.
That's right. So he would probably have to come in at like 210 or something like that for against Fedor, who weighs like what, 230 something. So it wouldn't be that crazy.
You got a question for us?
Maybe. Okay. So from Dustin Love, we talked about this a little bit. Did you catch Ben Askren breaking down the reasons for why it's inevitable the UFC will introduce a 165-pound division, even when you spread the roster over 3 divisions? Of course, he means 155, 165, and 170, or 175. You still have roughly 57 fighters per division, which would still be the 3 deepest divisions by far. #math is hard. It is, Dustin Love. It is.
And, I agree with you 100%, Dustin Love. And this has been my argument from the beginning, man, because if you look at sort of the bell curve of the number of fighters in each division that the UFC employs, it is astounding how much higher lightweight and welterweight are than the rest of the pack. And it's not even really close. Like for most part, most divisions have between 20 and 40 fighters. Lightweight and welterweight have, I don't even know the number at this point. It's something like 70 or 80 fighters each. And it's just impossible. We get to these situations, especially when the title is not being defended, like at lightweight, where these divisions are so great, and there's so many great matchups and so many compelling fights that you can put together. But it is so obscenely backlogged that nobody in the top 10 will take a fight against somebody below them because they're just trying to keep their spot for when opportunity finally comes. And it just becomes this thing where you got guys like Charles Oliveira, Gregor Gillespie, all these others who deserve to be in that mix, and they just can't get there. If you take out 170, put in 175, put 165 in, split that talent up, you still got 3 very big divisions, and you could do. There's more potential for champion versus champion fights. There's more potential for movement from division to division. There's just more potential for fun, and I am an advocate for fun always. So I wish they would do this. Except when it comes to Anderson Silva fights, then you hate fun. Fair. That is fair. You came out on the right side of history on this one, so I cannot say otherwise, but I do not, I hate you for it. I always do. Keep that in mind, viewers. I always come out on the right side of history. Anyway, as far as 165, I mean, inevitable, yes, I think it is inevitable, but that also means that the UFC has to pull the trigger on it, and Dana White has to say that it's going to happen. Just because something seems like it's inevitable and seems like it makes sense doesn't mean they'll actually do it, as we know from experience.
So I do think it will eventually happen, but it won't happen because of why Dustin Love is saying it'll happen. It won't happen because of the numbers game and how deep can this division be and that, whatever. It'll happen when there's a pay-per-view card and they need a title fight to headline it. And there are two people in different divisions, maybe 170, 155, who are not going to either go up or down, and they will have to make the 165-pound division at least a title for that division to make that a pay-per-view headliner. That is my guess and my prediction, because the UFC is only forced into these decisions sometimes for monetary financial reasons, and that would be my speculation as to how that 165-pound division gets started. Like, hey, Conor McGregor's got to fight somebody. Who's he going to fight? Oh, this guy, 165. Let's do a title. That's how it'll probably start. They love hot-shotting these super fights, so why not do one at 165?
That is one of the points about this whole topic that gets me the most, is just you guys know you need title fights, and you guys know that you love your champion versus champion fights. Why not add another division that everybody wants? Like, it's right there in front of you. I don't know. It is what it is.
Who knows?
Next question coming from Twitter from our old friend Tragic Bronson, who wants to know about this weekend. Are you guys excited to see the UFC debut of Kron Gracie? And what do you think of the matchup with Alex Caceres? And this is a sneaky one that's been flying under the radar, Mark. But this week, okay, so two things. One, I never, ever thought we would get Kron Gracie in the UFC. Ever. It just didn't feel like something that was one of those things that was going to happen. He felt like a Japan guy. Ryzen's been really high on him.
Yeah,
we're getting him now. He's 4-0. He is still 30 years old. He still very well may be in his prime. I am excited for that, man. He is a very, very good prospect. Obviously, coming from great lineage, in a very good grappling record. Subbed out Tatsuya Kawajiri like nothing back in 2016. We haven't seen him since then, so maybe there will be some ring rust. That is more than 2 years at this point. But I'm excited for it. But I want to ask you a question, because he's fighting Alex Caceres, who trains over here at the lab. And I did not realize what I'm about to say until I started doing research for this card. How many fights do you think Alex Caceres has in the UFC?
I mean, he's got a lot of fights. He's been around for a long time. 12?
20. This will be his 20th. This will be his 20th fight in the UFC.
What?
Dude, right? I remember that guy coming in from Tough being Bruce Leroy, annoying all of the people on The Ultimate Fighter. I don't know if this is a representation of how old I am getting, but that seems insane to me that this guy has been around for that many fights. I love this fight. Also, I will say, I don't know if this is true, but on Twitter, I think it was Jed I. Goodman who tweeted that this will be the 5,000th UFC fight. I don't know if that's true, but if that's true, that's a cool little piece of trivia.
That is very true, and I love that fight. I love. I mean, they kind of brought Kron Gracie in somewhat unceremoniously, right? I mean, it was almost like out of nowhere. Like, all right, we have Kron Gracie now. Okay, that's awesome. Like, that's really cool. Hickson's son is in the UFC, and it's a cool matchup because it's kind of like jiu-jitsu against. It's almost like traditional martial arts versus traditional martial arts in this fight, because Alex Caceres is such a traditional, karate, right, would be his background, and obviously Kron is straight up Brazilian jiu-jitsu. I know that he's obviously working on his boxing and his wrestling and other stuff with like the Diaz brothers and others, but yeah, great fight. And I'm going to touch on the rest of that UFC Phoenix card in a few moments in my promo.
All right. We're running short on time. Do you have any more questions you're seeing on Twitter?
One more. From Stashed. Alexander Volkanovski seems to think he is the best fighter in the 145 division that can beat Holloway. Ortega, Aldo, Edgar don't seem as the next contender. Is Volkanovski legit? For a man who stands 5'5", it seems a mismatch. The beat seems logical. Will the UFC make either fight? Listen, Stashed. Do not underestimate guys who are 5'6" or 5'5". I'm just putting that out there.
All right. So what I'm trying to follow the question.
He's basically he's asking, is Volkanovski really a threat to Max Holloway, and should he get the next title shot?
So I don't think he should get the next title shot. But is he a threat? I think I would give it to Frankie Edgar. But is he a threat? Absolutely. He's a threat. Are you kidding me? I mean, did you see what he did to Chad Mendez? No one does that to Chad Mendes, really. Very few people have ever done that to Chad Mendes. I am extremely high on Alexander Volkanovski, and I love that he's calling for Jose Aldo. I think that's probably the fight they'll get at 237 in Curitiba, and that will tell us a lot about Alexander Volkanovski, because as we've seen, Jose Aldo is still far from done if he wants to be. Seems like he wants to be, but he still has it in him, and he's taken out these contenders.
Yeah, I mean, I look, I know the guy that if he fights Holloway, he'll have a height reach disadvantage for certain, but that dude is a 5'5" tank of a man. He is a big man, former rugby player, just a fire hydrant looking guy, and he's got big power, and he's a great athlete, and he's got wrestling. I mean, he's an all around type guy, and yeah, I mean, he's a legitimate 145-pound contender. And also, Stashed, of course, he's saying he's the guy to beat Max Holloway. You think he's going to say he's the guy to lose to Max Holloway? This is just what fighters say and what they believe. Otherwise, they wouldn't be doing that. They wouldn't be fighters. But no, I'm definitely on the Volkanovski train, especially after that fight in LA against Chad Mendes. That was phenomenal.
Also, I mean, we talk about him being 5'5". I may be mistaken, but didn't he start his career at like welterweight or something like that? Like, he has slowly moved down to featherweight.
I mean, he's a really thick dude. Have you seen? There's a photo of him out there from his rugby days.
Yes,
and the guy is just an absolute unit, Shaun. He's a unit. All right, I'm okay now. And he's 5'6", by the way. We're about the same height, you and I.
Marc gets very touchy about the height. You need to give that extra inch.
That's what she said.
All right. Let's go ahead and hit that promo, and then we'll get out of here. You want to go first?
Yeah, I'll start it up. It's a good segue because we're just talking about this card coming up on Sunday. Keep that in mind. That's kind of part of this too. It's a Sunday card, and it is. I would say it's one of the best fight cards, top to bottom, that the UFC has done in quite some time, and deservedly so. It's the first main card that's on Big ESPN. It's a big deal for the UFC. But if you look up and down this card, Shaun, it is pretty impressive about the quality of matchups they have, and also the significance of a lot of these fights for each person's career. I mean, even from the beginning, even in the prelims, maybe you didn't even know this, Shaun. You know, Renan Barão is on the Fight Pass prelims of this card.
I did know that, yes.
Well, yeah, because you're doing prep for media day tomorrow. But yeah, Renan Barão, who was once called by Dana White as the best fighter in the world, pound for pound, is on the Fight Pass prelims against Luke Sanders, which is, by the way, a pretty damn good fight. There's Andrea Lee against Ashley Evans-Smith. I love that fight. The prelim feature fight, which also will be on Big ESPN, is Jimmie Rivera versus Aljamain Sterling. That is such a significant fight for the 135-pound division. It's all a great fight, and also there's a rivalry. It's New Jersey versus Long Island. I mean, that's granted the fight is in Phoenix, so whatever, but it's a great fight nonetheless. And the entire main card, I mean, we mentioned Caceres versus Kron Gracie. What a cool fight that is. Courtney Casey versus Cynthia Calvillo, very important 115-pound fight. Andre Fili versus Miles Jury. Vicente Luque, who is one of the more underrated guys at 170 in the world, against Bryan Barberena, who has a knack for knocking off guys on winning streaks and guys who are hot. And then the co-main event is just violence. Paul Felder versus James Vick at lightweight. What a great fight that will be. It should have happened last year, but it'll happen in Phoenix. And I just think this is one of the best cards in a while that the UFC's put together from top to bottom on television. There have been better pay-per-view cards, I suppose, but this is just a really fun card. There's not a bad matchup on the entire card.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting because you're right. I've been doing a lot of prep for this week, and there's not a lot of big names. In fact, there's almost no big names outside of the headliner. But all of the matchups are still. It's almost like a fight fans card, right?
It is, and and to me, there's a lot of fights that have kind of deeper stories, and fighters that have deeper stories, like a Renan Barão or a Jessica Penne, who's coming off a USADA suspension. Where is she at in her career? Former Invicta champion. Of course, the Rivera Sterling matchup. Kron Gracie. How about Andrea Lee? She had that whole personal issue where her husband allegedly domestically abused her. By the way, I still don't think that the police in Louisiana have found Donnie Aaron at this point. I think he's still on the run. And this is her first fight back since then. She was supposed to fight in Milwaukee in December, and that fight fell through when Jessica Rose Clark couldn't make weight. and now Andrew Lee's finally getting a chance to fight. So I mean, there's just a story in every fight. I'm super into this this card.
Yeah. Like I said, there's not a lot of big names, but there's a lot to like there. If you're like a real hardcore fan, it's going to be fun. I'm looking forward to it. And so I want to continue talking about this UFC Phoenix card for my promo, man, because I know we in the media, and especially in MMA, we often highlight the bad, right? We highlight the bad because it's kind of just the way the media works often, in the bad in the sport, this and that. But that's why it's always important for me to try to highlight the good too whenever the opportunity arises. And so I want to talk about Francis Ngannou because, as I said, I had an opportunity to spend some time with this man this week, and he did something pretty remarkable in the lead up to UFC Phoenix. He opened up, and you may have seen this a couple weeks ago, but he opened self-financed grand opening, the first full MMA and combat sports gym in all of Cameroon. And that was and he opened that in his old village of Bati. And I really hope I am saying that name right for that village. I am not sure how to say that. But, I was talking to him about this, and it's a very small village of several thousand people. And he was, in his mind, it's the first of many charitable projects that he wants to do through his foundation, which is called the Francis Ngannou Foundation. I mean, he said his ultimate goal is to help improve education by offering various scholarships for children in the village, and also build some sort of pathway for those who are sick in the village and can't get to a hospital to be able to get medical treatment. But it's just, it was incredible listening to him kind of recount how emotional of a day it was for him. This was really a project 3 years in the making for him, and for him. And he said basically that he has found his purpose by doing this, that by doing this foundation work and opening this gym and starting to try to do other things, he has found his purpose by helping the children in this village and even the surrounding villages, because he was saying people from all around the surrounding villages were coming for this grand opening to just help these children, the impoverished children, believe in themselves and their dreams, just like he did all those years ago. Because when he was coming up, he said that, all he heard was that you can't do this. This is a stupid dream. You should try to figure out something else, because nobody had really done it. And he went out and did it. And he wants to put that self-belief in other kids. And it was just very cool. I mean, when you were listening to the guy talk about it, the guy could not stop smiling. So here's to you, Francis Ngannou, just for the work you're doing behind the scenes and largely away from the limelight, because this isn't something he has really been pushing and talking about. To be able to give back and improve the lives of people who so desperately need help in any way they can. Good on you, Francis Ngannou.
Good man. That's definitely, I'm looking forward to reading that story that you're writing, Shaun, because it's kind of a different side of Francis Ngannou that we don't always get to see.
Yeah, very much so, man. So that about wraps it up here for us. This has been another fun edition of the A-Side Live Chat podcast here on MMA Fighting. We will have a very, very busy week. Fight week starts tomorrow here in Phoenix. We have open workouts and then media days on Friday, weigh-in Saturday. Everything's just kind of pushed back a day from a normal schedule. Also, as we said, Bellator, MVP versus Daly, and there's another Bellator event as well, I believe. So there's a lot going on this weekend, and you can be sure that we will have all of the coverage that you have come to expect here on this wonderful website. In the meantime,
today with Bellator Media Day, Danny Segura, our very own, was at Bellator Media Day today. So check out that stuff on MMA Fighting in a few hours.
Absolutely. And in the meantime, same time, same place next week, we will be here. My name is Shaun Al-Shatti. That is Marc Raimondi. This has been the A-Side. You enjoy your weekend, guys. We appreciate you.
A-Side.